Hi, this is Sandy Sims, and this Melisma tutorial will cover the internal functions of the CC/CV input at the bottom of the panel. Besides being able to control MIDI control changes, program changes, pitch bend, or aftertouch, the CC/CV input can be assigned to control some useful internal functions of the Melisma. Configuring the CC input is just a matter of scrolling to the MIDI CC quick box, then hold the encoder down to enter its settings. Below the CC channel and number is the CC function. The function will decide what the CC actually does. This can also be done from the quick box by scrolling through all of the CC numbers, but those are abbreviated. In the menu here, they are a bit easier to read until you become familiar with the abbreviations. Click to scroll through the MIDI functions until reaching chord, prog, low. When assigned this function, the CC/CV will control the lower limit of the chord progression from 0 to the upper limit. The maximum range will define how the CV is divided. I'll patch the first trigger to start chord progressions. With nothing patched to the CC/CV, the knob acts as a control of the lower limit. Now with an LFO patch, you can see the pattern changing as the CV changes. The chord upper limit can be assigned the same way, but to keep things moving, I'll select it in the quick box. The interesting thing about the upper limit is the maximum range is 31, so even if there are no chords in the list, the steps will still count. While patched, whatever the top display indicates is the maximum obtainable at 5 volts CV input. Sometimes it'll reach maximum, sometimes it won't. My favorite progression in the CC/CV control is the window function. This will move your range around as the progression steps along. For this function, I'll select the root progression window function instead. It'll be more recognizable. The top display shows the actual range while not patched. Because the CV will move this around down to 0, it's best to look at the upper limit. The CV must be at a full 5 volts before reaching that upper limit. Window manipulation offers quasi-random way to step through progressions, but can also be predictable with a CV sequence. So to clarify, there are 6 progression control functions assigned to the CC/CV input, 3 for chord progressions and 3 for root progressions. LHAND is the next control function the CC/CV input can be assigned to. The time base LHAND uses for its quasi-quantizing can be selected in the LHAND T quick box. The user set time in milliseconds allows a custom fixed sample rate from 20 to 250 milliseconds to be set. This fixed rate has absolute note firing control over LHAND. I'll demonstrate this from the LHAND T quick box. I've patched a fast LFO onto the LHAND CV. The longer the time, the slower the updates. The LHAND CV's rate of change also comes into play, which is why I'm using a fast LFO here. When the fixed time is selected, the CC/CV LHAND T function will control this via CV. As the LHAND CV also relies on rate of change, I'll demonstrate this with a fast LFO to LHAND and a slow LFO to the CC/CV control of its rate. Now the knob controls the slowest rate, with the highest rate when the CV input reaches 0 volts. If the fast LFO were instead a CV sequence and the update rate was slower than the sequence, then notes of the sequence will be skipped. This only applies when LHAND T is set to a fixed time. With a CV controlling the rate at which notes can be processed, this is a perfect way to thin out a complex sequence under CV control. With Screensaver, you can see the CV input and hear how the LHAND rolls. But LHAND notes, because of their density, are not shown on the Screensaver, just dummy notes instead. Here's the way a CV sequence will affect this parameter. The next CC/CV control function is ARP select. This one simply selects different arpeggio types or orders with the full CV range knob all the way up, accessing all 8. Note the ARP LED changes as it does when the ARP button is pressed. I'll patch the slow LFO into the CCCV again, so it steps through the range. A more logical way to use this CCCV function is to patch to a sequencer. The screensaver shows both the ARP notes and the CCCV. I'll set a larger chord as some of the ARP patterns sound the same with small chords. With a CV sequence, there is some repetition heard here. Another ARP-related function on the CCCV is the ARP gate. The ARP notes are based on the last gate duration, but this function lets you vary this from 1% to 200%. So if the CV falls to 0 volts, the ARP is paused. Using hold input to pause has a benefit of resetting the ARP as shown here. But the CCCV ARP gate will pause the ARP step without releasing the hold input. As I mentioned, the ARP gate length is relative to the gate input's duration. Now I will use the same slow LFO to show both the gate length and pause as it's falling below 0 volts. The CCCV can be patched over to a gate to control stepping of the ARP in the same way gating the ARP would work, but in reverse. Off of a CV sequence is the more interesting way to use this function. I'll put in a longer gate. Switching to an ARP or burst of notes with hold input assumes the chords and/or roots were being selected by a gate input. The next CCCV function requires a bit of beforehand knowledge on the spread modifiers to be appreciated. Spread can have three modifiers applied that will affect the way the chord spread, or strum, will act: random T, swing, and order. For this, I'll select the note order modifier because it's the easiest to hear and see. Don't worry, spread modifiers are covered in a different video. In the spread quick box, you can select the modifier parameter from 1 to 8 and whether or not you want the spread quantizing turned on or off. I'll turn it on for this demonstration. You can hear how each selection changes the note order. Short form SPRM selects the spread modifier CCCV function. Now you can hear the rather long chord number 60 spreads out nicely. The CCCV knob will take over control of this quick box. 0 is the original chord from low to high. The slow LFO will select different orders, but they are only sampled at the beginning of the chord playing. If the gate was faster, it would catch them all. Overlapping notes with spread and using this CCCV function can make some very nice melodies. Next, we'll give spread modifier swing a try. Swing in the Melisma goes beyond the standard amount to nearly 90%, only because this is a Euro rack module. As you can see, there's quite a lot of possibilities to this one. The last is random spreads, but I'll leave that one to all of you to play around with. The next CCCV internal function is the Select Bus State Selector. This was covered in the Select Bus video, so I won't go into it again here. The last internal control is the progression reset. There are several methods of resetting progressions, but this is the default. If the CCCV isn't assigned to do this, then by default, there is no progression reset. CCCV reset can be used in tandem with other resets. This, like other resets, is pretty straightforward, but can accept a CV value that, once above the set voltage, will set a global progression reset. This means the knob shouldn't be left all the way up, as it will require a full 5 volts to trigger. This can be super useful if using a malted CV from a sequencer and resetting on a certain step, the one that passes the voltage you have set. If there's any jitter on a slow signal like this LFO, then falling resets can be possible. A faster LFO won't let the progression get far, as resets are registered for the next step, regardless of when that step happens. Adjusting the voltage slightly higher or lower will cause a different step to reset. This LFO on the Wi-Fi MIDI module is fully 0 to 5 volts. So that's the Melisma CCCV internal functions. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial, and thanks for watching.